The autumn wind blew cold through the mountains of Provence. The leaves had turned orange and red, and they fell like rain from the tall pine trees. Walked alone on the narrow hiking trail, her boots crunching on the dried leaves beneath her feet. She was a veterinarian who worked with wild animals, and she often came to these remote forests to check on the deer population and look for signs of disease. She had been walking for 3 hours when she heard a sound that made her stop. It was a cry, high and sharp, like a wounded animal, but there was something strange about it. The sound had layers, like many voices crying at once. It made the hair on her arms stand up. Was not a person who scared easily. She had treated bears with infected wounds and wolves caught in illegal traps. She had crawled into dark caves to rescue injured foxes. Fear was something she had learned to push aside when an animal needed help. She left the trail and walked toward the sound. The forest grew thicker here. The trees blocked most of the sunlight, and the air felt heavy and old. She pushed through bushes and climbed over fallen logs until she reached a small ravine where the ground dropped sharply. At the bottom, she saw something that made her forget how to breathe. It was a creature unlike anything she had ever seen. It was about the size of a large dog, but it looked nothing like a dog. Its body was covered in scales that changed color as she watched, shifting from deep purple to bright silver and back again. It had 6 legs, 4 on the ground and 2 smaller ones near its chest that looked almost like arms. 2 of its legs were bent at wrong angles, clearly broken. But it was the eyes that held her. They were large and amber-colored, and they looked at her with an intelligence that no animal possessed. Those eyes held fear and pain, yes, but also something else. Understanding, awareness. Stood frozen at the edge of the ravine. Her mind tried to make sense of what she was seeing. A new species, some kind of mutation, but deep in her heart she knew the truth. This creature was not from Earth. The creature cried out again, and the sound broke her paralysis. Whatever this thing was, wherever it came from, it was hurt. It was suffering, and was a healer. She carefully climbed down into the ravine, moving slowly so she would not scare the creature. Its eyes tracked her every movement, but it did not try to run. Perhaps it could not. Perhaps it understood that she meant no harm. What it did not know was that she was being watched. High above in the ancient pine trees, 2 shapes sat motionless in the shadows. They were massive, each one standing over 3 meters tall when upright. Their bodies were similar to the cub below, but much larger and more powerful. Their scales were darker, almost black, and their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. They were the cub's parents, and they had been searching for their child for 3 days. The father's claws dug into the tree bark as he watched the human female approach his injured offspring. Every instinct told him to attack, to destroy this potential threat and retrieve his cub. His neural disruptor could kill the human before she even knew she was in danger. His claws could tear through her soft flesh like paper. But he did not move. The mother placed a restraining limb on his shoulder. Through their neural link she sent him a thought: wait, watch, learn. They had come to this small blue planet to study its dominant species. Humans, they called themselves. The galactic records on humans were strange and contradictory. Some reports described them as violent and dangerous, a species that killed its own kind in endless wars. Other reports spoke of unexplainable behaviors, acts of kindness and sacrifice that made no logical sense. The parents had planned to observe from orbit, to collect data without direct contact. But then their cub had fallen from the ship during a low-altitude survey, a malfunction in the safety field, a moment of carelessness, and now their child lay broken and bleeding in an alien forest. They could not retrieve the cub without revealing themselves. Their species had strict rules about contact with primitive civilizations, so they had watched and waited, hoping the cub would heal enough to move, hoping they could find a safe moment to rescue it. But the cub's condition had only grown worse. Infection had set into its wounds. It had not eaten in days. Without help, it would die. and now this human had found it. The mother watched as knelt beside the cub. The human's body language showed fear. Her heart rate was elevated. Her breathing was fast, all signs of a prey animal confronting something unknown. But she did not run. Reached out her hand slowly, letting the creature see it before she touched it. The cub flinched but did not bite. She gently examined its wounds, her face growing more serious as she saw how bad they were. The blood was wrong. It was blue-green instead of red, and it was thicker than human blood. The bones felt different under the scales, harder but more brittle. Nothing in her training had prepared her for this. But bones were bones, breaks were breaks, pain was pain. Took off her jacket. The mountain air was cold, and she immediately felt the chill bite into her skin. But the creature needed bandages, and her jacket was all she had. She tore the fabric into long strips, working quickly but carefully. The cub watched her with those intelligent eyes. Through its neural link, it sent images to its parents above. Not just what it saw, but what it felt. The human's hands were gentle. Her voice, when she spoke softly to the cub, was calm and soothing. And beneath her fear, there was something else. Something the cub had never felt from any creature outside its own species. Compassion, pure and genuine. The mother felt this through the link and was confused. This human gained nothing from helping the cub. She did not know what species it was, whether it was dangerous, whether helping it might bring harm to her own kind. She had no reason to risk herself. Yet she stayed, she helped. The father was equally confused. In their culture, resources were precious and survival was hard. Injured young who could not keep up with the group were left behind. It was sad but necessary. The needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few. This was logical. This was efficient. This human's behavior was neither logical nor efficient. It was foolish and dangerous and completely inexplicable. And yet, watching her carefully splint the cub's broken legs with pieces of her walking sticks, watching her give up her own warmth to keep the creature comfortable, the parents felt something they had not expected. Hope. Perhaps the stories about humans were true. Perhaps this strange, fragile species was something special. Perhaps they were worth studying more closely. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Finished her work and sat back, exhausted. The cub's breathing had steadied. The bleeding had stopped. It was not safe yet, but it was better. She looked around at the darkening forest. She should leave. She should go back to the trail, hike down to her car, drive to town and tell someone what she had found. But she could not leave the creature alone. Not like this. Not in the dark and the cold with predators hunting in the night. She gathered wood and built a small fire. She settled down beside the cub and prepared to wait until morning. Above in the trees, the parents exchanged a look. They had made their decision. They would not interfere. They would not reveal themselves. Not yet. They would watch this human through the night. They would see what she was truly made of. The fire crackled softly in the darkness, sending small sparks floating up toward the stars. Sat with her back against a large rock, watching the creature sleep. The splints she had made were holding well and the bleeding had stopped completely. But she knew that was not enough. The creature needed real medical care, medicine, surgery perhaps, things she could not provide here in the wilderness. She pulled out her phone and checked it again. No signal. She was too deep in the mountains, too far from any tower. She was alone with this impossible creature, and no one knew where she was. Her stomach growled. She had finished her small lunch hours ago and she had not brought dinner. The water in her bottle was almost empty. The night air was growing colder, and without her jacket she was starting to shiver. A smart person would leave. A smart person would hike back to civilization, get help, and return in the morning with a proper team. The creature was stable for now. It would probably survive the night. Probably. Looked at the creature's face. Its eyes were closed, but its breathing was uneven, troubled. Even in sleep, it was suffering. She could see the tension in its body, the small twitches of pain that ran through its muscles. She thought about her grandmother, who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 7. Her grandmother had been a simple woman who had never finished school, who had spent her whole life in a small village in the countryside. But she had been the person ever knew. All living things are connected, her grandmother used to say. The birds, the fish, the insects, the humans. We are all part of the same world, the same life. When you help another creature, you help yourself. When you hurt another creature, you hurt yourself. Had not always believed this. As a scientist, she had learned to see the world through data and evidence. But sitting here now, looking at this strange being from another world, she felt the truth of her grandmother's words in her bones. She would not leave, she could not. The creature stirred and opened its eyes. They reflected the firelight like pools of liquid gold. It made a soft sound, almost like a question. "Hey there," said gently. "Did you have a bad dream? It's okay, you're safe now." The creature did not understand her words, of course, but it seemed to understand her tone. The tension in its body relaxed slightly, and it let out a long breath. Reached out and carefully stroked the smooth scales on top of its head. The scales were warm to the touch, warmer than she expected. The creature closed its eyes again and leaned into her hand, like a cat enjoying being petted. High above in the trees, the mother watched this interaction with growing amazement. Touch was important in their culture too, a sign of trust and affection. The fact that her cub was allowing this stranger to touch it meant something profound. It meant the cub trusted the human. The father was having his own thoughts. He had spent his long life studying other species across the galaxy, cataloging their behaviors, analyzing their social structures. He had seen acts of altruism before, but they always had explanations. Animals helped their family members because they shared genes. They helped their group members because cooperation increased everyone's chances of survival. Every act of kindness could be traced back to selfishness, to the basic drive to survive and reproduce. But this human was different. She did not share genes with the cub. She was not part of its group. Helping the cub did not increase her chances of survival. If anything, it decreased them. She was wasting energy, wasting time, putting herself at risk. And yet she helped anyway. Why? The father did not understand, and this bothered him. He was old, over 300 years by human counting, and he had thought he understood the universe. But this small human female was showing him something he had never seen before. The night grew darker and colder. The temperature dropped below freezing, and frost began to form on the ground. His breath came out in white clouds, and she could not stop shivering. She looked at the creature and saw that it too was struggling with the cold. Its scales had turned a darker color, and its body was curled into a tight ball. Without thinking, took out her emergency blanket, a thin sheet of reflective material that she always carried in her pack. It was meant for her, to keep her warm if she got lost or injured, but the creature needed it more. She carefully wrapped the blanket around the creature, tucking it under its body to trap the heat. The creature made a small sound of surprise, then a longer sound of comfort. Its scales slowly changed back to their normal purple-silver color. Sat back and wrapped her arms around herself. The cold was painful now, biting into her skin like tiny teeth. She would not sleep tonight. She could not afford to. If she fell asleep in this cold, she might not wake up. So she did the only thing she could do. She talked. "I don't know where you come from," she said softly to the creature. "I don't know how you got here or why, but I want you to know that you're not alone. I'm going to stay with you until morning. I'm going to make sure you're okay." The creature's eyes opened and watched her as she spoke. "My grandmother used to sing to me when I was scared," continued. "Old songs from long ago. I don't remember all the words anymore, but I remember the feeling. Safe, warm, loved." She began to hum softly, an old melody that her grandmother had sung to her when she was a child. It was a simple song about the moon and the stars, about how they watched over the world while everyone slept. The tune was gentle and sweet, and as she hummed, she felt some of the fear and tension leave her body. The creature seemed to respond to the music. Its eyes grew soft and its breathing slowed. The pain lines around its eyes smoothed out. For the first time since had found it, the creature looked peaceful. In the trees above, the mother felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Her species had evolved beyond most emotions, or so they believed. They had learned to control their feelings, to make decisions based on logic rather than sentiment. This was what made them strong, what made them successful. But listening to this human sing to her injured cub, watching her sacrifice her own comfort to give warmth to a stranger, the mother felt tears forming in her eyes. Not water, like human tears, but a thick, clear fluid that her species produced in moments of intense emotion. She was crying. She could not remember the last time she had cried. Perhaps when she was a cub herself, before she learned to control such weakness. But now, in this cold forest on this small blue planet, she wept for the kindness of a stranger. The father noticed and moved closer to her. Through their neural link, he felt her emotions and was shocked. He had never seen his mate cry, not in the 200 years they had been together. "What is happening to us?" he asked silently. "I do not know," she replied, "but I think we are learning something important." "What?" The mother looked down at the human, at this fragile creature who had given everything she had to help a being she did not know, and she finally understood. That strength is not about power or control. That true strength is about choosing to be kind when it costs you something. That the greatest power in the universe is the power to care. The father considered this for a long moment. It went against everything they had been taught, everything they believed. But watching the human sing through the cold night, watching her fight to stay awake so she could protect his child, he could not deny what he was seeing. Perhaps they had been wrong about many things. Perhaps this small planet, this primitive species, had something to teach the galaxy. The night stretched on, long and cold and dark. But the fire kept burning and the human kept singing, and somewhere in the forest, two ancient beings began to see the universe in a new way. The darkest part of the night came around 3 in the morning. The fire had burned down to glowing coals and was too tired to gather more wood. Her body shook with cold and her fingers had turned numb. She could barely feel her feet anymore. But she stayed awake. Every time her eyes started to close, she forced them open again. Every time her head began to drop, she lifted it back up. She would not sleep. She would not abandon the creature. The creature itself seemed to be doing better. Its breathing was steady now, and its scales had taken on a healthy glow. The warmth from the emergency blanket was doing its job. Whatever biology this being had, it was responding well to basic care. Looked up at the sky through a gap in the trees. The stars were incredibly bright here, far from the light pollution of the cities. She had always loved the stars, had always wondered what might be out there in the vast darkness of space. Now she knew. Life was out there, intelligent life, and it was lying beside her, wrapped in a silver blanket, trusting her with its survival. She laughed softly at the absurdity of it all. A simple veterinarian from a small town, the first human to make contact with an alien species. No government officials, no scientists, no diplomats. Just a woman who liked hiking and helping animals. The creature opened its eyes at the sound of her laughter. It tilted its head in a way that seemed curious, almost questioning. "Sorry," said. "I'm just thinking about how strange life is. Yesterday I was worried about my rent and whether I should get a new car. Today I'm sitting in the woods with a creature from another planet. Life never turns out the way you expect, does it?" The creature made a soft sound, almost like agreement. "I wonder what your name is," continued. "Do you have a name? I suppose you must. Everyone has a name," she thought for a moment. "I'm going to call you, it means star, because that's where you came from, right? From the stars." The creature's eyes seemed to brighten at the sound, as if it understood and approved. Far above, the mother heard this through the neural link and felt another wave of emotion. The human had given her cub a name. In their culture, naming was sacred. It was an act of claiming, of accepting, of love. By naming the cub, the human was saying, "You belong, you matter, you are mine to protect." The mother moved slightly in the tree, and a branch creaked under her weight. His head snapped up, her eyes searching the darkness. For a long moment, she stared directly at the spot where the mother was hiding. The mother froze. Had she been seen? Would the human panic? Would she run? But did not run. She could not see the massive alien in the shadows, but she felt something. A presence. A weight in the air that had not been there before. Her instincts, honed by years of working with wild animals, told her she was being watched. Instead of fear, she felt a strange calm settle over her. "I don't know if you're out there," she said softly, speaking to the darkness. "It's family, but if you are, I want you to know something. I'm not going to hurt your child. I don't want anything from you. I just want to help." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Where I come from, we believe that all life is precious, that every creature, no matter how strange or different, deserves kindness. I know humans don't always live up to this belief. We can be cruel and selfish and destructive, but we can also be kind. We can also be good. I hope you see that tonight." She turned back to and gently adjusted the blanket. "Whatever happens, I'm going to take care of your little one. That's a promise." The father watched this speech with something close to shock. The human was speaking to them directly, knowing that they might be there, offering them reassurance and making promises. She had no weapon, no defense, no way to protect herself if they chose to attack. Yet she showed no fear. He had studied warriors from 100 worlds, had seen courage in battle and bravery in the face of death. But he had never seen courage like this. The quiet courage of compassion, of choosing to be vulnerable in order to give comfort to others. The hours passed slowly, fought her exhaustion with everything she had. She stood up and walked around to keep her blood flowing. She did jumping jacks and rubbed her arms. She counted stars and recited old poems she had memorized in school, anything to stay awake, to stay alert. At some point, woke again. The creature looked at with those golden eyes, and something passed between them, an understanding, a connection, smiled despite her exhaustion. "Hungry?" she asked. She searched her pack and found a protein bar she had forgotten about. It was probably not suitable for alien biology, but she broke off a tiny piece and offered it too. The creature sniffed the food cautiously, then delicately took it with its small front limbs. It chewed slowly, considering the taste, then made a sound that seemed positive. Laughed. "Not bad, good, eat the rest, you need your strength." She gave the entire bar, keeping nothing for herself. Her stomach protested loudly, but she ignored it. She could be hungry for one night, needed the food more. The mother watched this and felt her heart break and heal at the same time. This human, this stranger, was starving herself to feed her cub. There was no logical reason for it, no evolutionary advantage, no survival benefit. There was only love, pure, simple, unconditional love. The first gray light of dawn began to appear on the horizon, had made it through the night. She was exhausted beyond anything she had ever experienced, hungry and cold and weak. But she had done it. She had kept safe. She looked at the creature and saw that its eyes were brighter, its color stronger. The night of rest and warmth had helped, would live. Relief washed over, so intense that tears sprang to her eyes. She had not realized how scared she had been, how certain she was that the creature would die despite her efforts, but was going to make it. She had saved a life. An alien life, a life from another world. She wiped her eyes and laughed at herself. "Look at me, crying like a baby. You must think I'm very strange." Made a soft sound that might have been sympathy. As the sun rose higher and light flooded the forest, the parents began to prepare. The time for watching was over. The time for decision had come. They had seen everything they needed to see. They knew now what kind of creature this human was. They knew the truth about her species, the truth that the cold data and distant observations could never reveal. Humans were not just violent or selfish or dangerous. Humans were kind. Humans were brave. Humans were capable of love that asked for nothing in return. The father looked at his mate. Through their link they shared a thought, a decision, a hope. "It is time," he said. "Yes," she agreed. "It is time to show ourselves." They began to descend from the trees, moving silently toward the small clearing where the fire had burned down to ashes, where their cub lay wrapped in a silver blanket, where a human female had just proven that the universe was more beautiful than they had ever imagined. First contact was about to begin. Was checking splints when she felt it, a change in the air, a shift in the atmosphere around her. The forest, which had been coming alive with morning bird songs, went suddenly silent. Every creature seemed to hold its breath. She looked up slowly and her heart stopped. Two massive figures emerged from the mist between the trees. They were similar to in form, with the same six-limbed bodies and color-shifting scales. But where was small and vulnerable, these creatures were enormous and powerful. They stood over 3 meters tall, their dark scales absorbing the morning light. Their eyes glowed with an inner fire, and their presence seemed to fill the entire clearing with something heavy and ancient. His body reacted before her mind could process what she was seeing. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to flee, to get as far away from these terrifying beings as possible. Her legs tensed, ready to sprint. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. But she did not run. Instead, she did something that surprised even herself. She stood up on shaking legs and moved to position herself between the creatures, and her body became a shield, a barrier, a final line of defense for the injured cub she had spent the night protecting. She knew how foolish this was. These beings could crush her with a single blow. They could tear her apart before she could take a single step. She had no weapons, no defenses, no chance of survival if they wanted her dead. But she stood her ground anyway. "If you're here to hurt this creature," she said, her voice trembling but clear, "you'll have to go through me first." The words hung in the air between them. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then something impossible happened. A voice appeared in his head. Not a sound, not words spoken aloud, but a thought that was not her own, placed directly in her mind. "That is our offspring. We have watched you care for it through the night. Why would we harm what you have worked so hard to save?" Gasped and stumbled backward. The sensation was strange and intimate, like someone whispering directly into her brain. She looked at the creatures with new eyes. Your child," she stammered, "is your child." The thought came with a feeling of curiosity. "You gave our cub a name." Yes, I called it. It means star. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend." "You did not offend." This thought came from the other creature, the one somehow knew was the mother. "It is a beautiful name, a gift. We are grateful." The creatures moved closer and forced herself not to step back. Up close, she could see details she had missed before. The intricate patterns on their scales, the intelligence and depth in their eyes, the way they moved with a grace that seemed impossible for beings so large. They were beautiful, she realized. Terrifying, yes, but also beautiful. "You are afraid," the father observed. "Your body temperature has dropped. Your heart rate has increased. These are signs of fear." "I am afraid," admitted. "You're the most frightening things I've ever seen, but I won't let fear stop me from doing what's right." "And what do you believe is right?" Thought for a moment. Protecting the helpless, helping those in need, treating every living being with kindness and respect. The parents exchanged a look. Something passed between them, a silent communication that could not hear. "We have traveled to many worlds," the mother said. "We have studied thousands of species across the galaxy. In all our observations, we have never seen a being risk itself for a stranger with no expectation of reward. That's just kindness, said. All humans are capable of it. Are they? The father's thought carried a hint of challenge. Our records show your species killing each other in wars, destroying your own planet for profit, treating other species with cruelty and indifference. Felt a flash of shame but did not look away. Those records are true. Humans have done terrible things. We continue to do terrible things, but that's not all we are. We are also capable of love, of sacrifice, of compassion. We are complicated creatures. We have both darkness and light inside us. And which is stronger? The mother asked, the darkness or the light? Considered the question carefully. I don't know, she finally said. I think it depends on the individual. I think it depends on the choices we make. I choose to be kind. I choose to help. That's the only answer I can give you. The father moved closer still, until his face was just a meter from us. His eyes, ancient and deep, studied her like a scientist examining a specimen. But there was something else in his gaze, something that might have been respect. We watched you through the night, he said. We saw you give up your warmth, your food, your sleep. We saw you sing to our cub and give it a name. We saw you stand ready to die to protect a creature you did not know. He paused, and when he continued, his thought was softer. You asked if anyone was watching. You spoke to the darkness and promised to keep our child safe. We heard you, we saw you, and we believe you. Felt tears prick her eyes. She did not fully understand what was happening, but she felt the weight of the moment. This was important. This mattered. We came to this planet to study your species, the mother explained. We wanted to know if humans were a threat or an opportunity. We have been watching from far away, collecting data, analyzing patterns. But data cannot show the truth of a species. Only experience can do that. You have shown us the truth of humanity, the father added. Not in your words or your technology or your achievements, in your actions, in your kindness to a stranger, in your willingness to sacrifice. The mother moved to and gently lifted the cub in her limbs. The silver blanket fell away, and saw that its injuries already looked better. The swelling had gone down, and the color had returned to normal. Our cub will recover, the mother said, because of you. I'm glad, said. And she was. Despite everything, despite the fear and confusion and exhaustion, she was genuinely happy that would be okay. The father reached into his chest and watched in amazement as a panel in his scales opened to reveal a hidden compartment. A small object, a crystal about the size of her thumb that pulsed with soft blue light. This is a beacon, he explained. It is attuned to our species' communication network. When your kind is ready to reach beyond your world, to take your place among the stars, activate it. We will come. Took the crystal with trembling hands. It was warm against her skin, and she could feel a gentle vibration like a heartbeat. Why, she asked, why trust us, after everything we've done, everything we might do? The father looked at his mate, at his cub, at this small human female who had given everything to help a stranger. Then he looked back at. Because we have spent 10,000 years watching the galaxy, he said. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have seen species destroy themselves and each other. We have seen cruelty beyond imagination and war without end. But we have rarely seen kindness, the mother added, true kindness, the kind that asks for nothing in return, the kind that costs something to give, the kind you showed our cub. Any species capable of that, the father concluded, is worth knowing. Any species capable of that might just be capable of anything. Looked at the crystal in her hands, then at the alien family before her. She understood the weight of what she held, the future of humanity resting in her palm. I'll keep it safe, she promised, until we're ready. We know you will, the mother said. And there was warmth in her thought, an affection that crossed the boundaries of species and worlds. Goodbye, we will not forget you. They turned and began to walk back into the forest, looked over its mother's shoulder, and could have sworn the creature smiled. Goodbye, she whispered, goodbye. They disappeared into the mist, and was alone once more. She stood in the clearing, holding an alien artifact, as the sun rose fully over the mountains and a new day began. Nothing would ever be the same again. 3 years had passed since that night in the forest. 3 years since had found an injured alien cub and spent the night keeping it alive. 3 years since she had received an invitation from the stars. She sat now in her small veterinary clinic in a town at the edge of the mountains. The clinic was quiet this evening, the last patient gone home, the lights dimmed. On her desk, between stacks of medical files and a cold cup of coffee, sat the crystal. It pulsed softly with blue light, as it had every day since she first received it. She had not told anyone about what happened that night. How could she? Who would believe that a veterinarian from a small town had made first contact with an alien species? Who would believe that the future of humanity was sitting on her desk, disguised as a strange paperweight? Sometimes she wondered if she had dreamed the whole thing. The memory had taken on a dreamlike quality, soft around the edges, too strange to be real. But then she would touch the crystal and feel its warmth, feel the gentle pulse of its energy, and she would know. It had happened. It was real. Her phone buzzed with a message from her friend. Another invitation to dinner, another attempt to set her up with some nice young man. Smiled and typed a polite refusal. She was not ready for dating. She had too much on her mind. She picked up the crystal and held it to the light. It was beautiful, she thought, beautiful and terrifying and full of promise. Everything depended on this small object. Everything depended on her. But what was she supposed to do with it? The aliens had said to activate it when humanity was ready. But what did ready mean? Ready to travel to the stars, ready to meet other species, ready to take their place in a galactic community. Looking at the world around her, was not sure humanity would ever be ready. They were still fighting wars over land and resources. They were still destroying the environment that kept them alive. They were still treating each other with cruelty and indifference. And yet, she thought about the doctors who worked without rest to save lives, the teachers who dedicated themselves to helping children learn, the volunteers who gave their time and energy to help strangers in need, the ordinary people who performed small acts of kindness every day, expecting nothing in return. Humanity was not perfect. They might never be perfect, but they were trying, they were growing, they were learning. Maybe that was enough. Maybe ready did not mean perfect. Maybe ready just meant willing to try. Put the crystal down and leaned back in her chair. Outside her window, the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there was growing up, recovering from injuries that a human stranger had treated in a cold forest. Somewhere out there, two alien parents remembered a night when their beliefs about the universe had been changed forever. She wondered if they thought about her sometimes, as she thought about them. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see an old woman standing in the entrance to her clinic. The woman was small and bent with age, leaning on a wooden cane. In her arms, she carried a small cardboard box. "I'm sorry to bother you so late," the woman said, "but I found these in my garden shed. I didn't know what to do." Took the box and looked inside. 3 newborn kittens, eyes still closed, so young they could not regulate their own body temperature. They were mewing weakly, hungry and cold. Their mother was hit by a car, the old woman explained, tears in her eyes. "I couldn't just leave them to die." Felt a familiar feeling wash over her. The same feeling she had felt 3 years ago, kneeling beside an injured alien cub in a mountain forest. The pull of compassion, the call to help, the knowledge that she could make a difference. "You did the right thing," she told the old woman. "I'll take care of them." She spent the next hour setting up a warming station, mixing kitten formula, feeding the tiny creatures one by one with a small syringe. It was tedious work, the kind of work that required patience and gentleness and endless attention to detail. But as she worked, she felt something click into place inside her. An understanding that had been building for 3 years finally became clear. This was what humanity was capable of. Not just the great achievements, the scientific discoveries, the technological wonders, but this, the small acts of kindness, the everyday decisions to help, the choice to care for another creature, to give warmth and food and love to something helpless. The aliens had been right. This was the measure of a species, not their power or their technology, but their capacity for compassion, their willingness to see suffering and try to ease it, their ability to love without expecting love in return. Finished feeding the last kitten and placed it back in the warm box with its siblings. They snuggled together and fell asleep, their tiny bellies full, their small bodies finally warm. She looked at the crystal on her desk. It seemed to glow a little brighter, as if in approval. Maybe humanity would never be perfect. Maybe they would always struggle with their darker impulses, their capacity for cruelty and selfishness. But they would also always have this, the light inside them, the kindness that could not be extinguished. Picked up the crystal and held it close to her heart. She closed her eyes and thought about the parents who had watched her through that long, cold night, about all the beings out there in the vast universe waiting to see what humanity would become. "We're not ready yet," she whispered, "but we're getting closer. Every day, with every small act of kindness, we're getting closer." The crystal pulsed warmly in response and smiled. She had time. Humanity had time. They would grow and learn and change, and one day they would be ready to reach for the stars. Until then, there was work to do. There were kittens to feed and animals to heal and people to help. There were countless small kindnesses to perform, countless moments to choose compassion over indifference. That was the real invitation the aliens had given her, realized. Not just the crystal, not just the promise of first contact, but the challenge to be better, to be worthy of the stars. She put the crystal back on her desk and returned to her work. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance, and somewhere in the vastness of space, a young alien named looked toward a small blue planet and remembered the human who had once sung it to sleep. Both of them, the human and the alien, were connected by a simple truth that crossed all boundaries of species and worlds. Kindness was the greatest power in the universe. It could bridge any gap, heal any wound, build any future. And as long as there were beings willing to be kind, there was hope for everyone. The clinic lights glowed warmly in the darkness. The kittens slept peacefully in their box and worked on, one small act of kindness at a time, building a future among the stars. The beacon waited patiently on her desk, glowing with the soft light of possibility. It had all the time in the universe. And so did humanity. When they were ready, the stars would welcome them home.